Hello, welcome to Flower Joos. My name is John McDonald, and today we're going to make an interesting spring arrangement. And my inspiration for today is really this creation from a previous workshop. And this is really just some old twigs and some wire and some grasses. Now, I've had this kicking around in my studio for a long time, so it's completely dry. I've never wanted to throw it out because I thought I will use it. And now I think is the perfect time to use it because it's going to work really well with a spring design. So let's get started and see how this gets on. So the first thing I need to say is how this was made. Now, it's actually got some garden fence wire in there and basically making like 3 loops, and then you combine them like this and use cable ties just to catch them at the thing. That gives you your basic structure underneath. And then it's just a case of adding some twigs and adding any decor that you want. So that is how this was made. You can have it so it sits upright, you can have it so it lies flat. It's really up to you. You could even use it for hanging, actually, would be quite cool. Now, as I say, this has been kicking around for a long time, so it's completely dry. I was looking at thinking how best to use this. So I've played with a few options. I thought this was a good idea, maybe using the cones as a base, but I think this is a little bit heavy, so I steered away from that. If I was going to use that, I was thinking I might use like a dish in there to give me a water source. Now, another thing you can do is you could use tubes to act as a water source as well, but I steered away from that because, as I say, I think that was a bit heavy. And what I've chosen is actually this dish, and this is a dish that's really just like from the kitchen, like a kind of casserole dish. It's nice and heavy, it's got a little bit of depth so it'll catch some water, and I'm just going to put a few pin holders in there as our mechanic. Now, what I need to do then is add water. And I really want it to be as deep as possible. I can add a little bit more at the end. Just before we move on and put the actual piece on, I'm going to add a little bit of moss here as well. And this is also just going to help hold our design in place. So when I first did this, I actually put grasses, different flowers in there, and little lamb's ear leaves. So there's still little dried remnants from that previous use. And I think if you're like me, it's really hard to actually throw things out. What I love about this is we've got this space and we've got this ability to look into the design. So the first thing I want to do is I do want to add a little bit of fresh stem to it. And this will actually help hold the actual thing in place. So I do need to kind of weave that in. That doesn't help if it hits me in the face. Now, this is a little bit messy, but I think it's kind of cool. What's nice about adding a few fresh stems is that we have got a little bit of green showing on there. And I think this is what I quite like about the idea of using this, is it's going to give us that feeling of spring meeting the end of winter, where there's still dead materials lying around. So just like when you're cleaning the garden, there's a lot of material from the year before that just is kicking around. And in a way it's beautiful. But I think just having these little fresh buds just totally livens that up and makes that look much more alive now, which is really interesting. The other thing I've got is wanted to bring some green into it, so I've got some of these leaves. Now, these are actually off my Cymbidium orchid plants. I just want to weave that in as well. And I think that creates a really interesting line. And I think that's the thing, when we've got this shape, it's nice to accentuate that shape. And as long as my materials are going in the water, I'm not too worried. What I did have to do was just take a nice pair of scissors and just trim these leaves a little. Because the ends of the Cymbidium leaves can look a little bit scrappy. So we've actually tidied them up just with a nice pair of sharp scissors. Now there's a lot of grass going on in this. I quite like it. Again, it's just a case of seeing what materials you have. And in a way, using things that you've got, like the other day I was cutting my grapevines, and rather than just throwing everything out, what I've done is I've made a couple of rings. So if you have got access to a garden and you want to trim things, then actually it can be a good opportunity to make something for a future date. So just making a couple of rings with twiggy material is a really good idea. So this I really like. I think this is quite interesting. And our main flowers for this are going to be these beautiful tulips. And we're just going to, again, weave these in. A little bit brittle. And I want this to basically, now this is actually creating a mechanic in itself. So yes, I've used pinholders. The pinholders will really disrupt structure from moving around. They can be used for the flowers, but they can also be used as a little bit of weight. But really the structure itself can be used for holding the flowers. As long as those flowers drop into that tray of water, then I'm not worried about whether they're on the pin holder or whether they're actually just being held by the structure. And that gives us a lot more options. So this is quite a kind of arty piece, but I deliberately chose flowers that I think people have easy access to. So at the moment we're in the run-up to Valentine's. The shops are full of daffodils and tulips. There's that start of the spring materials coming in. I think these are easily accessible flowers for people. What will be quite nice is that these are going to grow and change. And it's going to become an interesting form just in itself. So again, these tulips are helping to bring that fresh green into the design. So just like we used our cymbidium leaves, then the leaves of the tulips are also adding to that freshness with their green and with their form and shape. So we've added our tulips. With this, you could really use any kind of material. You don't have to use anything that I'm saying you have to use. I would definitely use spring flowers. So what I would suggest is tulips, iris, narcissus, all of those would be great. But for me, more than necessarily it being spring, is more about colour as well. So we can just work on that idea of like clashing colours. So when I think of spring, I tend to think of like yellows and pinks, whites. They all work really well together. And it's got a couple of little bits of greenery that I'm just going to pop in. And this is really, again, just to give you that kind of garden feel. And draw your eye into the actual arrangement. Now you could leave it at this stage and just have it with just the spring flowers. I do have a few little roses, so I'm going to put in just a few roses into the center just to create a little bit of a focal point, just to take the eye in. You don't have to, but I think in a way it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to make them really big or add too many. But just enough that your eye gets drawn in and you can see that there's a bit of a focal point in there. And of course, if you have any other little flowers that you want to add, it's got this little offcut of Santini. And I also have a couple of little gerberas as well. That might just take through the back. So again, this idea of keeping things low, and drawing the eye really in. And there we go. I think there's a point where you definitely don't want to go any further and then you start to just make it into like a big hot mess. So what we've got is we've still got shape and movement. We've got a nice range of colour, it's nice and bright, it's cheery, but it's interesting. Because it's in a shallow dish, this could be placed on a coffee table, on a dining room table. It's going to be viewable from all round, and it really has interest because it has layers. So we've got this layer of dried material, layer of fresh, we've got the line of the movement of the materials, but then your eye is drawn into those flowers that are inside, and that feeling of an enclosed space. It just really sings of the hedgerow and adds a lot of interest. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. We've got new videos on a regular basis and we'd love you to join us for a future one. But if you've not already subscribed, we'd really appreciate it if you could. If you can like the video, if you can share the video, that would really help us as a channel. So thank you for watching. If you want a little bit more inspiration, then have a look in the description box for the video and we'll post a link to one of our other designs there. But until next time, take care and we hope to see you soon.